Well, it's 8 a.m. on Pacific time anyway, so on the West Coast, I guess. Hey, welcome to this edition, another very, very exciting edition of Voices of Video. Casey, are you ready to have an awesome conversation?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. Well, good. Well, let me introduce you. So, as everyone knows, today I'm going to be talking with Casey Bateman, who is with HUDL, and you're going to hear all about HUDL. But we were just chatting, Casey and I, about how the company was founded, and I'll let him tell the full story. But they're actually one of the OGs in streaming video, and I have been fortunate enough to have been a part of not HUDL, but some other companies in the same vintage. And it's amazing how, on one hand, 15 years ago is 15 years ago, and yet it seems like yesterday how far we've come in streaming video. So, Casey, welcome to Voices of Video. Thank you for joining me. This is going to be great.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be
Yeah,
here.
yeah, cool, cool. Well, let's start. Obviously, give a quick intro to yourself, and tell the viewers what you do, and then talk to us about HUDL, what HUDL's building, and let's get into this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I'm Casey Bateman. I'm a principal engineer in the office of the CTO at HUDL. Specifically, what I do is I look into our video technology stack. I kind of own that area, technically speaking, and my job is to kind of look at new technologies, assess the landscape, and try and plot out a strategy for the company around our video vision and like how we're to execute on that.
It's a big job plotting the landscape and the vision of the future, right? But
Right.
tell us about HUDL, because you are a remarkable company, especially well, you're, I'm sure, a remarkable company, but in the area of streaming. And I have to believe that probably not all of our viewers even know who HUDL is. And yet I think everyone's going to be shocked when they hear, the scale of operations that you run and, what you do. So, what does HUDL
Yeah.
do?
HUDL is we are a technology company that focuses on empowering coaches, athletes, and fans sports experience.
Mm,
Right. So we build a coaching tool platform that really helps coaches and athletes like work their game and get better at it.
mhm,
Right. We have a platform then also for our fans who can't necessarily be at games or are at games and want to enrich their experience at those games, or even just follow their favorite athletes and teams, just
mm.
watch that content. Right. So we're kind of like a full service sports video suite of
Yeah.
products. So yeah, and the company you were saying OG company, yeah, company started back in 2006. Got our first customer was actually in 2007 and
Incredible.
stuff with the University of Nebraska.
Wow, wow. And what's the origin story? Are the founders, athletes that were trying to solve a problem, or, technologists that were just looking for an application? Both? Neither?
Yeah, well, actually, so yeah, our three founders is Dave Graff, John Wirtz, and Brian Kaiser. They were attending the Rake School at the
Mm,
University of Nebraska, which is like an
mm,
entrepreneur
mm,
computer science program, the
mm,
stuff that the University of Nebraska has. Dave Graff, who is our CEO, was working with the football team at that kind of
mm.
time. And just to kind of paint a picture of how it was back then for you, these teams, when they'd exchange video, I mean, they were doing VCRs. And a
Yeah.
lot of time they would have their video recordings, they would cut everything and record to a VCR and then meet other coaches, like drive and meet them halfway. Right. It was,
And exchange tapes, right?
yeah, exactly.
Literally.
Exactly. So
Uh,
I mean, this is what it was like, and it is hard to think like based on where we are now that that's like there was a
yeah,
past in which that was the thing to do.
yeah.
So Dave Graff had the idea at that point in time, and John Wirtz and Brian Kaiser joined in, and they developed a product they called HUDL. Now, it was spelled a little differently back then, like the actual what you'd think of when you're talking a huddle was the
Yeah.
spelling. And
Yeah.
it was kind of a smoke and mirrors product. That's what we kind of call it back then. That they took to Coach Bill Callahan at that time for the University of Nebraska, and really sold them on it. So for that first year, they were kind of using this new product or huddle at that point in time to kind of like test it out with the school. And then in 2007, in June 2007, we officially signed the Huskers as our first client. It took about another year until about March of 2008 until we finally got our second client. If you know the football story behind Coach Bill Callahan, he wasn't with the Huskers very long, but then immediately after went to the Jets, and he brought Huddle with him. So our second ever client were the New York Jets.
Professional team. Incredible.
Right.
Incredible.
Right. And so that was kind of like the idea originally is Huddle was going to be made to be targeting these like college and pro teams and stuff. So for that first 2 years, we had a lot of interest from high school, small college teams, like wanting to use the product. And it was kind of one of those things up until that point, we just turned them down. But in 2008, kind of decided we needed to shift, split the product into two sets, the Huddle Pro suite and then Huddle, and start tackling that high school market. And from there, Huddle just started exploding. Right.
Incredible.
Yeah. By the end of 2008, we got an additional 12 high school clients. In 2009, we got up to 350 total clients. Then by 2010, we were up to 1,300 high school.
Wow. That's hockey stick adoption. And was it just purely like viral? Or I guess it almost makes sense. You talk about network effects. Like if two coaches were driving to meet, all it takes is one of those coaches to adopt it, and you automatically get the next get the other one, right? Because
exactly,
they'd be like, wait a second, you don't have to go drive. I mean, what a pain, like that could burn a Saturday afternoon or whatever,
absolutely
a Monday night,
time.
or whatever. So yeah,
most of these high school coaches, they want as much time as they can doing what they love, driving back and forth. Driving back and forth is probably not what they love.
Yeah, incredible. So one of the statistics that I think we put in our poster art for this particular interview was that you have 97% of U.S. And I guess we should say American football, right? Because, so we'll get into, and we are going to get into talk about the technology. So anybody who's listening and saying, wait a second, are you going to talk about what they built? Yes, we are. But I think, sometimes as technologists and engineers, just my observation is we're sometimes almost too quick to dive in to talk about the nuts and the bolts and the protocols and the standards. And without the context of the application, how a product's being used, why something is built a certain way, sometimes it can either lead you to not realize really the full breadth of the significance of why something was built the way it is, or you may be asking like, well, why are they using that standard, that technology? That doesn't make sense. Well, when you understand the devices, for example, or you understand and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. So that's just my caveat to say, bear with us here if you're looking for us to get quickly into the nuts and the bolts. We're going to do that. But you have 97% of American football teams. So that is across like high school and colleges, the high school college pro. Like what exactly is your addressable market there that you look at?
For the American football market, yeah, it is 97% of the high school football teams in the
Mm,
US are all using
amazing.
the Huddle platforms. And really
Amazing.
the ones that aren't are generally when you start getting into the six-man football
I
teams,
see.
smaller, like smaller
Small,
schools.
small
Yeah.
schools. Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's incredible. And then you have schools and customers outside the US, or are you
Yes.
regionally?
Yeah.
Where are you?
We are actually global. We have a
Mm,
big presence, kind of in the UK area. We have a big
mhm.
presence over in Sydney,
And I hear they also
Australia.
have football over there, but the ball looks a little different.
They do. It's a little different, and they're not carrying it as much.
That's
So
right.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah,
Yeah, hands not so much.
hands off, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And
Yeah,
I guess they also use their heads. Although I think I'd rather use my head to hit their ball than American football.
oh yeah, no
And,
kidding.
using my head to hit another large person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Okay.
we've
Wow.
definitely expanded. We have
Yeah.
we service over 40 different sports right now. Make
Wow.
up Huddle, and there's
Wow.
over 230,000 different organizations
Incredible.
and teams, and yeah, we are global for
Incredible.
sure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely amazing. Well, we have talked through the years so I've known about Huddle and worked with Huddle for a little while, but until that point, I too was just absolutely shocked at like, how is it possible?
Yeah,
Being around the industry a little while, you can sometimes feel like, oh, I know everybody who's built the significant platforms, and then Huddle pops up, and you go, wait a second, how have you guys been hiding out? So yeah, congratulations. Well, let's talk then about you. Now you were not a part of the original founding team, right? You joined after
correct.
the first
Yep.
platform was built. Okay.
Yep. I joined in 2013, right at the beginning of the
Okay.
year there.
Okay, all right, but you're telling me that you were scaling, 2010, you had, I think, 1,300 schools, and
Mhm.
and so clearly, 2013. Well, let's face it, that's 10 years ago now. So you've been there through some growth. Why don't you tell us what the platform looked like then? Just
Yep.
architecturally, how did you build it? Were you building on the cloud? Did you own your data
Yep.
centers? Did you talk to us architecturally, and then maybe walk us through what it looks like today, from an
Yeah.
architectural, perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking back to kind of like that 2010 time range, Huddle, we mainly targeted kind of stop and go sports or clip based sports is
Mm,
what we've kind of
mm,
referred to them as, or that's kind of like the
mm,
American football market. That was our bread and butter, still is kind
mm-hmm.
of our bread and butter. Even though we've got so many other products. So back in 2010 through 2012, Huddle was clip based. And I say clip based because most of
Mm,
those sports, it was, like I said, stop and go. When you're looking at a
mm.
football game, it's a anywhere from a 5 second play to maybe a 40-second play for one of those really long
That's a
time
really
periods,
good
right?
point. I remember you made that comment to me at one time when we were talking, and I went, yeah, that's right. Like American football in particular, I guess you care if the running back is repositioning themselves and whatever. But let's face it, what I really care is once the play starts,
Right.
and there's a significant amount of time where the play hasn't started, players on the field and whatever, but so
Right.
that's what you mean, just to be clear about kind of the
Correct.
clip based, and yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of dead time that coaches really don't want to see. They want to see the
Yeah,
action,
yeah,
right?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, again, they're busy, so they don't need to sit through all of
Right.
that.
So at that point in time, our video came in individual clips. We used WMVs at that point in time. We
Mm,
used WMVs
sure.
because it played really nice with Microsoft Silverlight. If you remember
Yeah,
the Silverlight technologies,
yeah, yeah.
um, And we used Silverlight back then because it allowed them to build a pretty rich experience where we could actually draw directly on the player canvas. We could do more intelligent like clipping and stitching of video files together, right? Which is a kind of an integral part to the coaching workflow, right? They need
Sure.
at certain point in times, much like if you're watching an ESPN broadcast and they're breaking down the film, they need to like telestrate essentially on the video play and draw out where motion should be, where routes need to be. We used Microsoft Silverlight kind of at that point in time with WMV files. We started shifting into MP4s like quickly after that as MP4 kind of became the streaming standard. It was definitely the streaming standard at that point in time. And yeah, so most of our platform at that time was all online. We were actually in 2009, we signed with AWS. We were very early adopters.
2009. Wow. Yeah. Wow. So you're an OG on AWS as well.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
We all of our video files were then hosted. You know, we host our video files on AWS and stream them down through the HUDL.com website. And yeah, at that point in time, HUDL definitely looked very different. It was that bright orange color that you would see almost all over the place, and was really designed to be optimized for a football coach's experience. Spreadsheets are almost like a spreadsheet or table looking area where they could enter in like play-by-play data as what happened, like what were results, and then then you'd have your video player Chrome.
And so the original experience was all in the browser. And I also was a part of building some demos with Silverlight back in the day, and showing some very cool interactive features. And you know, now that it's interesting you bring that up, I can remember I was a part of a consortium called DECE. We were doing the digital locker in the original days of transactional VOD. If you purchased a file on one particular platform, or if you rented it, not only was it only viewable on that platform, so like Vudu, you couldn't watch it on well, back then, you know, let's say Apple, but you know, you couldn't watch it on some other competing platform, but you couldn't even watch it on a different device on Vudu.
Right.
So if you originally transacted it, you know, purchased or rented, whatever that transaction was, on your connected television, which, you know, way back in the day, there were like 3, you know, but you couldn't then watch it on your laptop. And I can remember some very, very cool demos that Microsoft did with various partners, showing just some really cool, you know, basically how you could take like the interactive DVD or Blu-ray experience and translate that to streaming, you know, which again, I think a lot of us forget, like, even though now it's a little bit archaic and resolutions are very, very low, but you know, there were some pretty cool like Blu-ray and DVD experiences, you know, where the, you know, interactive menus and all kinds of really cool stuff, you know. So that's an aside though. So you were streaming into browsers. Now today, what is the dominant playback mechanism? You must surely support and have very strong support for mobile devices, I'm guessing.
And actually, playback is still kind of split between the different devices, almost perfectly in half. I just looked up the numbers here yesterday to kind of get some updates. And I would say, so half is still web traffic. And we have various protocols we stream over, you know, MP4, HLS for varying platforms. And then, yeah, we do also have our Android and iOS applications where a lot of our athletes utilize those to kind of watch their video and do some of their review. We also have, we're getting into the fan streaming space more and more. So we have a whole host of smart TV apps as well.
If someone uses one of your apps, do they get some additional functionality, or is it just convenience, not, you know, needing to use a browser? And of course, some devices, maybe a browser's not the best playback mechanism. I'm thinking connected television as an example, but
Yeah, using our apps, and it kind of depends on which app they would use, but yeah, they would get some
Mm,
additional features and availability.
sure.
For example, our iOS app, we had the idea that anybody has this phone with them at any given time can capture different moments in sports. That's a great capture mechanism for getting video into
Mm,
Huddle. So we do have capture in our iOS and Android applications as well.
the only sports that I played were I was in track. I was pretty competitive in high school and ran a little bit in college, but so I can't exactly relate. You know, I never played football, never played basketball, but I can imagine a coach standing on the sidelines now. You know, everybody has an iPhone with them, right? Or an
Right.
Android device, and you could whip that out in theory. I'm just assuming this is the
Yeah.
function and capture 5, 10, 15 seconds of something and then you upload it, right? And
Yeah.
then it's available. Yeah, that's interesting. Wow. Um, okay, well, a lot of streaming conversations are in the distribution context, and that is the one to many or the one to a very large number of minis,
Hmm.
meaning, certainly for live events, like a Super Bowl, if we're going to stay within the
Right.
sports conversation, every year it's like, well, how much larger was this year's audience than last year's, for
Right.
streaming. um, but it seems to me, based on what you're describing, your use case for the platform, from a platform perspective, is different, because I don't think, I mean, do you run events where you might be streaming to like millions of people, like a single event? I'm assuming you don't.
Yeah, not really. We don't really have those kind of big events. Most of the time, we're streaming to just directly to teams feeds,
Yeah,
right? To their fans, to their athletes and coaches.
but on a Friday night, for example, especially if we're talking, high school sports, there must be a peak time where all of a sudden your platform, is pretty crowded, right? Because that's kind of
Absolutely.
when a lot of schools are playing, and there's even a time of the day, that you can look at from East Coast to West Coast, if we're just going to talk about the U.S. So that's that's a different type of challenge, right?
Hmm.
And believe me, it's not that I'm not suggesting one is easier or necessarily harder than the other, because it is a challenge when you have a stream and it's a single stream or a small number, but it's going out to a million people. Okay,
Hmm.
there's scale and there's challenge in that, but it's different when you might have 10,000 simultaneous streams that individually might just be going to a very small number, but yet your platform perspective, you have to power them all equally, right? And you have to
Right.
provide a great service. So, can you give us some, some insights into how your platform is built, and maybe even some surprises that someone might say, well, why did you make that choice? And they're like, oh, well, because
Yep.
I don't have to deliver to a million people, but I do have to be able to run on a Friday night, whatever, X number of hundreds or thousands of streams reliably, without question. So yeah, give us some insights of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you kind of hit the nail on the head there earlier when you were talking about we are built definitely different. We most of the time in our content is coming from teams and coaches and is targeting their athletes, their
Mm,
fans, right?
hmm.
And so we will have a recording, these 2 hour long events that are really, they may have a couple hundred views on them. So we're not talking big
Yeah,
numbers, right? Which
yeah.
definitely, when you're talking about the distribution side, the number one thing you might immediately think is, yeah, our caching strategy is very different. Where a lot of
Hmm.
these sites, they may hit for really high cache rates. I'm very happy with like a 40 to 50% cache hit rate.
Yeah,
Right. That's
yeah,
that's actually fantastic for
yeah,
us in that
yeah,
situation.
yeah.
Uh
But Disney streaming would be like, oh no, we have a
yeah,
serious problem here. you know.
exactly. Exactly. And
Yeah,
so the things that
yeah.
we have to optimize for in that situation are going to be regional optimizations on trying to
Mm,
pull content down to the users, right?
Mm,
So we look at things like pre-caching content, bringing content, either when we're talking our
mhm,
HLS streams, bringing fragment by fragment content down to the
mm,
users. Just as they're watching the stream, we know what their next, like the
mm,
next chunk of video they are likely to watch is going to be. We try and get that pulled into these pops in the regions where they are watching these videos. So a lot of pre-filling of the cache is a big thing for us, and also a kind of a diversity. I know this is important across multiple organizations, regardless of their whether or not they're getting millions of views on a single stream or not, but also
mhm,
the diversity um, of pops available and diversity of CDNs. Right, we run a
mm,
multi CDN environment here,
mm,
so. And that's because like we don't usually have isolated chunks watching the same stream across multiple areas. I mean, you might have isolated chunks of users watching
mhm,
our content, but
mhm.
then, across the state, someone's not watching that
Yeah,
content. We need to,
understand.
yeah, we have to target essentially our users for what's going to be the best performing
Yeah.
CDN potentially for their region,
Mm,
like for
mm,
their exact ISP and where they're accessing from. So,
yeah.
how we target our users, what CDN we provide to them is slightly
Mhm,
different than what I would say
mhm.
you might see out of like a
Yeah.
YouTube or a Disney or something like that.
So what I hear you saying, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so correct me, but almost always when you're talking about these really large scale events, where it's like streaming a single stream to millions, it's about cost reduction, right?
Right.
So
Yep.
very often the CDN decisioning gets down to and it is splitting fractions of pennies, right? Because it's
Right.
meaningful when you're delivering to millions.
Right.
I didn't hear you mention. Obviously, you care about
Yeah.
costs. I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting you don't, but is it true that your decision is not strictly necessarily based on cost, and it's performance as you stated, or it's even just purely about coverage? Like if one CDN doesn't have coverage in a market, well, you
Absolutely.
need someone who does. So
Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
I would say yeah, cost is always going to be important. You're
Yeah,
right.
of course.
But
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm not implying that it's not,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, mostly it's just the availability of the network and the
Yeah.
performance
Yeah,
that is
interesting.
kind of the more important thing. If a coach can't access their content because a
Yeah.
couple regional pops
Yeah.
or one CDN is
Yeah.
are out, then you can
Yeah.
be assured that our support team is going to have their phones
Gonna
ringing.
gonna get a quite yeah, get a
Yeah.
trouble ticket filed. What is the role of quality with this content? And I'm asking the question because really I don't know. Like
Mhm.
is this one of those shocking things where coaches are like care about quality even more than, or is there kind of a different bar of acceptable quality, therefore you can encode at maybe lower bit rates? Like, are there some sports that are more perceptive to quality than others? How do you approach that?
Quality is really important in the sense that there are a few things that we have to get absolutely right in encoding our videos. And that's going
Hmm.
to be the like field details and jersey details. One of the things that
Oh,
you don't
good
really
point.
you think when a coach is breaking down content, you'd like to think that a coach knows the names of their players. Obviously, they know the names of their players, but
Yeah,
when you're
yeah,
watching a video and you may be getting a video shot from a press box, like on a football field,
yeah,
everyone's wearing a helmet. All you're seeing is jersey numbers. Like you need
yeah,
to be able to quickly
yeah,
identify who did what and where.
yeah.
Clarity on numbers. And one of the things we see is with a lot of those lower bit rates, with some encoders out there on the market, some of
Mm-hmm.
those finer details, the jersey lines and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Also with hair, like you get people with longer hair kind of blocks jersey numbers, and the
Oh, yeah.
encoder kind of creates these artifacts or unnecessarily
Interesting.
blends together jersey
Yeah,
numbers
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
features just together, and it makes
yeah.
it more difficult for coaches to
Interesting.
see. So
Yeah.
Yeah, we do generally have to provide a slightly higher bit rate or use an encoder that
Mm-hmm.
is going to be optimized for
Yeah.
like providing those clear lines and also bolder colors, right? Like one of the things
Mm.
that's really easy when you're talking about an outdoor game is getting that color blending. Some
Mm.
encoders work really well at kind of keeping your colors bold, like not desaturating content too
Mm-hmm.
much.
Mm-hmm.
Other encoders may not do as great a job.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
quality to take this back. Yeah,
Yeah.
quality plays a big,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
just a really big part of the sports video experience because
Yeah.
when we're watching content, we use the identifying characteristics
Mm.
like jersey number, field lines to
Mm-hmm.
help tell the story of what's
Mm-hmm.
happening on the field.
Interesting.
Right. So
Yeah.
those things
Makes
have to be
sense.
clear and easy
Yeah.
to kind of read.
Yeah. 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 That's interesting. That completely makes sense. So, what is the architecture? What I hear you saying is that a large percentage, if not nearly all, of the source material you're actually not generating. So it's not that you're shipping. Are you putting cameras out in the schools, and is it on the school and the coach and the players to,
We started off
you
where it
know?
was on the schools and the players. We have over the past several years been developing an in-house camera. I've
Makes
actually got my
sense.
development rig of it right here. It's
Hey,
this.
cool,
Oh,
cool. Up. Let's
is
see
it,
the.
there you
Ah,
go.
there we go. There we go. Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
That's
Cool.
our
Cool.
huddle focus camera. Basically, it's a stationary camera that gets set up in gyms, gets set up on like football fields in different areas that will record.
Interesting.
Uses a collection of sensors, maps them all together in a 3D environment, does player tracking and other like AI to help kind of track
Yeah.
the ball, and we create like smart tactical feeds of video that
Hmm.
is uploaded directly to Huddle that way. So
Interesting. Okay.
but
So,
overall, like video can come from a coach, from their
yeah.
iPhone, like from a an expensive camera. A lot of these like Texas schools, they have nice expensive rigs and stuff. They love using.
They
Yeah,
love their high school football in Texas, don't they?
yes, they do.
By the way, I grew up in Colorado, and I grew up when Nebraska and CU and were were the absolute powerhouse teams.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I know a little bit, even though I didn't play the sport. I know the culture. I can
Mhm.
relate to it. Um, yeah, it actually is really amazing. If someone's not been exposed to it, just go to a high school football game in Texas, or back in the day in Colorado on a Friday night, and it's quite an experience. They
It
take it
is.
serious. They
It's a way of life for
yeah.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so you have content coming in from a lot of different sources, many of which you don't control, meaning that it could be very high
Right.
quality, very well shot, you know, great lenses, great cameras, all that stuff, and others it's a phone and a shaky one at best, you know.
Yeah.
So then, are you doing some sort of processing in the cloud? Do you transcode that? Like, what do you do with that video once it's on the platform? And, do you have a decision tree? Like, are you using some sort of, even I've got to get it in there, AI to, to maybe do some sharpening or some processing or something, to improve quality.
For most video, the way that we've kind of operated for so long is we've kind of taken the single encoding ladder approach. So we didn't have
Mm,
like a lot of a smarter way to uh, provide more bits to a certain stream. I mean, it's just
mm,
historically how we've done it, and some of that is around cost management, right? When you've got
yeah.
all these streams, we've got 100 petabytes of video out on S3 in our video library right now.
Mm,
It's a lot of video,
it's a
and in
lot.
order to kind of keep our costs down, but also provide the best possible experience, we generally
Yeah.
ran just tests to find what is going to be the optimal bit rate in which 95% of our users have top quality for
Yeah.
their highest
Yeah.
renditions that we have. And that's
Yeah.
kind of historically how we have done things. Now we are looking at exploring a little deeper, maybe providing different experiences and stuff
Mm-hmm.
where we're exploring obviously some of these new codecs that are out here like HEVC,
Mm-hmm.
AV1 do a great
Mm-hmm.
job at providing that better
Mm-hmm.
quality video off the bat at those lower
Yeah,
bit
lower
rates. They
bit
kind of
rates, sure.
moving forward, I think we're kind of looking to optimize possibly on a per sport level.
Mm,
Which I mean,
interesting.
we talked a little bit earlier. Yeah, there are some different requirements for different
Yeah,
sports that might just have a worse experience. I'm thinking water polo is a big one. Like most people in the
because
video world, you got the moving water. You know, it's there's
yeah,
so much
water is
motion, right?
super challenging to encode.
Yeah,
I mean, all those pixels are in motion
right,
continuously. There is no step by very definition, right? With water.
right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I know one of the things that we've had to do in special situations like that is, I mean, we have to slow down the encoder significantly. We
Hmm.
can't, like in
Hmm.
those
Yeah,
situations,
yeah,
you have to pay for a little additional compute
yeah,
time
yeah,
on that. And then, yeah, you have to up the bit rate on those
yeah,
streams to provide a much
yeah.
better experience.
Are you standardizing on 1080p for what the coaches and the players are looking at, or is there a need to deliver 4K?
Yep. So, and that kind of depends on the sport and the level there.
Okay.
The NFL, they still run on 720p,
Isn't that
which is
amazing?
it's
I,
amazing. However, our coaches, most of them, they want 1080p. Our football,
yeah,
it's all
yeah,
we
yeah,
we are delivering 1080p.
yeah. I have to ask a question here, and you can answer it as sufficiently general as possible to not give away any secrets or
Mhm.
inside. But it still is shocking to me how broadcasts, and you mentioned the NFL, and not singling out the NFL because
Mhm.
it's true of major leagues, kind of go around that are running on, sometimes there's even MPEG-2 happening. Now I'm talking more in the broadcast distribution chain,
Right.
but my point is where there's literally 2, 3, sometimes 4 generation old technology that they're still using today, in
Yeah.
720p or interlaced. It is shocking. People just don't know how much interlaced is still happening even in live TV production.
Yeah.
Now interlaced is that, that's largely, I think, gone. And but 3, 4, even 5 years ago, there was still a tremendous amount of interlaced content, that had to be then de-interlaced. And meanwhile, everything's being streamed at 720p or 1080p or 4K, all progressive, and yet the production chains
Yeah.
are, are so old. Why do
We
you think
it's
that
funny you mentioned
is?
that.
Like, why, so I'm
Uh,
asking just a general question, like why is that? And 720p at the NFL, like, why is it that a high school team in Texas can have better quality than the professional league? you know?
yeah. Real
Uh,
quick, it's funny you do mention that over 50% of our video we get in, we do have to de-interlace as well. So yeah, it's still out there for sure. And
wow, amazing. Yeah.
I can tell you that generally when you're talking about these bigger programs, or I'll speak specifically to the NFL, there's just the
Yeah.
concern around security. Security, it's
Oh,
they are
interesting.
just more worried about.
So their
Uh,
view is the lower the resolution, the less useful the video is. Is
well,
that
not
or
necessarily. The lower the resolution, they see a lot of them. They actually still record to SD cards, and they have runners that will run video
mm,
content from the sidelines up to the press box and stuff. They Some of them are under the belief that going to 1080p, they would fill up those significantly. A lot of these hardware devices that they use to record to SD cards only support 720 feeds.
crazy?
Yeah,
So it's like literal hardware limitation. That could be as
yeah,
simple as I have a file here everything will play it back except for this one device, and therefore I have to, you know, reduce my experience because of
Yeah.
this one single device in this, you know, somewhat complicated distribution chain. I have to say, I'm not surprised by this because, again,
Mhm.
getting back to the interlacing issue and other, you know, in my past dealings with broadcast, you know, whenever I've asked, like around 4K, that's where, you know, I really became exposed. Like, why is it that 4K is so hard to adopt, you know? And everybody says, well, it's the cost. It actually isn't the distribution. Yes, there's a distribution cost associated, but it's the cost of supporting throughout the entire pipeline. And
Correct.
it can be
Yep.
as simple as my graphics, you know, you know, box. I'm blanking out. You know,
Yeah.
they have a name for it, but you know that that doesn't support 4K, and there we have to go through all kinds of gyration. You know, we have to you know, we have to
Yeah.
basically convert it from 4K to 1080p, and then we upscale, and it's like, well, now we lost it, so we just run 1080p all the way through. You know, and you're like, you mean just because of the graphics overlay device, that hardware, the
Yeah.
consumer's missing out on this beautiful experience? Like, yeah, that's it.
And
You're
yeah,
like, wow.
and that was the other reason, right? Is cost. Cost is the big
Yeah,
thing there, especially
yeah,
jumping to 4K. When you're talking
yeah,
4K, a lot of these boxes that these coaches have in their office that
yeah,
they're watching on, they're not
yeah,
going to support the latest like
yeah,
HEVC. They're going to be
yeah.
1080p televisions,
Yeah, it's
and
a H.264, and yeah, it's an old
right.
TV, and yeah, interesting. So you mentioned like AV1 and HEVC, and you know, it's certainly of interest, and we've had conversations about those codecs. Are you you know, platforms have different strategies for adopting, shall we say, next gen codecs. And, you know, you know, one strategy can be, you know, we're just always going to use the latest and greatest. And, you know, and then there are the more conservative platforms who are like, yeah, you know, we're not necessarily going to be the first to adopt. Where are you in this continuum? And then tell us why, you know, because again, I think the why is important. You know, it's one thing to say, well, you know, we're pretty conservative, but then is that because people are on devices that just simply don't support AV1, you know,
Yeah.
as an example? So it's like, yeah, but tell us, you know, where you
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, you're right. The simple answer is yes, we're going to be a little more on the conservative side of this. Why
Mhm.
that generally is when you look at our user base. I mean, you're going to have our power users are going to be coaches, and you have a big
Yeah.
mixture of the types of coaches and the technologies that
Mhm.
they're comfortable with,
Yeah.
even. Um, so when you kind of look at our user
Yeah.
base, where they're running on, whether or not it's personal devices or even school devices, keep in mind we're looking
Mm,
at high schools and stuff. And a lot of public school systems aren't going to have
right.
access to the latest and greatest
Yeah.
technologies out there.
Yeah. 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 That's true.
So generally we got to look at what devices are our users accessing our content, for what platform they're accessing as well, right? I think we can, when you start talking more of our fan content, we get to kind of branch out beyond the high school environment and start looking
Yeah.
at just device share around the world.
Yeah.
When you start once again getting into our core platform, yeah, we're dealing mostly with school computers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Interesting.
generally we are, like I said, more conservative on that. We are getting into the HEVC world,
Hmm.
given the Chrome announcement here last year about supporting HEVC playback.
That
I
was
mean,
good for you, I'm sure. Yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
big for us.
Yeah.
Since
Yeah.
the bulk of our users, about 98% of our web traffic is going to be either on Chrome or in
Hmm.
Safari, both of which
Mm.
will support HEVC if the hardware
That's right.
capabilities are there.
That's right.
Currently, we're sitting at about, I double checked it again last week. We're just about 71 to 72% right in there of our users have that hardware capability to
Amazing.
decode HEVC.
Amazing. Wow, wow. How do you know that?
Yeah. So what we are doing, we ran a couple tests. So really fun thing you can kind of do for anybody wanting to judge this. I mean, there are a couple HTML5 video APIs you can say for can play video codecs. So,
Hmm.
right, I have to look
Hmm.
exactly what it is, but essentially it's
Hmm.
trying to, by specifying your codec tag, you can determine if the system can properly like build the
Hmm.
decoding chain, connect the pins, get a
Hmm.
decoder
Hmm.
and stuff. So that is based on whether or not Chrome or Safari tells us that they absolutely do have support or is most
Hmm.
likely supported and
Hmm.
stuff. So
Hmm.
definitely
Got it.
support
Got it.
uh, gives us approximately about 65 and the
Yeah.
percent, and then the additional there's about 10 to 15% there on top of that that
Hmm.
are in the some support, and we assume that about half of
Yeah.
those actually can
Yeah.
support.
Actually can. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So you mentioned that you have a custom app across certain platforms. Do you put a software decoder in there, or would you contemplate that, or are you 100% dependent on just the hardware support on the device?
We are right now, it's going to be hardware, like entirely dependent
Yeah.
on that. We have talked
Yeah.
about in some of these newer codecs, like we've looked at potentially even
Like
LC,
AV1, for
EVC, or
example. Oh,
AV1. Yeah,
LC, EVC. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
At putting those in there, and just for the our users and the time they're spending on our app, we don't see as good of battery life. I mean, that's going to be your
Yeah.
big thing that you see when you're putting in
Yeah.
a software decoder on these newer
Yeah.
codecs is battery life really takes a hit and
Hmm.
stuff. And it's just it
Yeah.
hasn't been worth it to us,
Yeah.
especially when you're weighing at the development cost to put something like that in
Sure.
with the all right, if the majority of our users actually need this for playback, does it even make
Yeah.
sense for us
Yeah. Yeah.
to encode a quality of that to
Yeah.
them? So generally
Yeah.
when we are looking at new qualities, new codecs to use, it's you know dependence on hardware support or a codec that is not going to
Mm.
sacrifice like battery life significantly in mobile devices
Yeah.
are what we're
Yeah.
going to have to look at.
I know some of the, like David for AV1 is really, really power performant, which
Yeah.
is to say that it actually is amazing
Yeah.
what it can do and how little energy consumption it needs. At the same time, there's always that trade-off, right? You still have to push the user even to upgrade your apps. So you can build all this, and then
Hmm.
if insufficient number of users actually upgrade their app on the device, then they don't even have access. So it
Right.
takes it's a lot to push upgrades even. So yeah.
And I would say even then though, we do have really good adoption rate of our new app
Mm,
versions when they come out. And so
yeah.
we're generally looking
So
at about a
people are
15 day to a month to the majority of our
wow.
users getting
Wow.
updated
And the majority
apps.
is like what, 90% of the base,
Correct.
or
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, which
and
is
you're
good.
right.
That's really good.
AV1, AV1 has been something we've actively been looking at
Hmm.
since Apple announced that there was
Hmm.
AV1 support with the
Hmm.
HLS spec.
Yeah. We didn't talk about DRM. Is DRM required on for any of your content or on the platform?
Not currently, no. It's
Okay.
something that we haven't heard. We're kind of waiting to hear back from our coaches on whether or not that is
Yeah.
actually required.
Yeah.
I would say it's not likely going to be something that we will ever need.
Yeah. 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 Understand. What's coming for HUDL in terms of the platform? Like, are there any, neat things that you're focused on, or even you're just dreaming about building that you can talk
Yeah,
about?
absolutely. I got two big things that I'm really excited about that we're working on. The first, as just coming hot off our conversation here with HEVC, we are looking to kind of upgrade our platform to provide HEVC for our coaches.
Amazing.
We're really excited that we're going to be able to deliver a visually lossless quality to them.
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is really big for us. The other one I would say really excited about this technology is what we call our on-demand rendering system.
Mm,
So
mm,
this is something that we are currently fully utilizing for all of our secondary qualities in the US. So all US based access video is currently using this in
mm,
production, but it
mm,
is the ability to encode the secondary renditions of our ABR ladder, so our
mm,
lower qualities on the fly.
mhm.
And so this is
Wow.
something where we're able to cut down our storage footprint in half,
Yeah.
which when you're
Yeah.
talking about the sheer size and the amount of content we have,
Yeah.
um, you
That's
you kind of
very
think,
meaningful.
yeah,
Yeah.
that I mean, when you kind of think about it, uh, in a lot of situations, I would say that the math wouldn't work out. You'd be spending
Yeah.
significantly more. Our access
Yeah.
patterns
Yeah.
are that this video, coaching video, is generally going to be accessed over the first 14 days of its life. Then it will just kind of
Mhm.
sit there, and the chances of
Yeah.
it being
Yeah.
accessed again are very small. So if we
And what is
can
your
deliver
SLA?
those, yeah,
Like, how long do you have to keep that video on the system?
yeah. So we used to say it was indefinite.
Ooh.
However, yeah, we've there are still like it's going to be based on the coach's subscription, their package, on
I
how many
see.
hours
I
of
see.
video. We got to
Okay.
keep that video around as long as the coach keeps it in their account.
I see. I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So is this, I buy a bundle of hours, let's say, and then I
Yep.
exceed my, I'm about to run out, and then I, as a coach, have to decide, I really don't need those, and I
Right.
can, I could, whatever, choose for deletion or something, or just delete them, I guess,
Right.
video. Yeah, got it. But yeah, it's an interesting problem, and it's interesting that you're pointing out that it's now becoming possible to trade compute cycles, or I'm sorry, trade storage for compute
Hmm.
cycles, meaning that it's actually more cost effective to transcode on the fly and not store those additional renditions than it is to just have them pre-recorded and stored. And I've heard pretty consistently, and of course obviously we provide methods to do that very, very cost
Hmm.
effectively. So for a lot of our customers, they've done that math, and it makes sense in almost every context, to do it that
Right.
way. So yeah, storage cost, even though storage cost is being driven, it's Moore's benefited from Moore's
Right.
law.
Storage is
uh
still cheap, right?
Storage is cheap until you're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of
Correct. Yeah.
petabytes, and when you get up to a certain scale, you
Yeah.
know there
Then
was
it's no longer cheap.
yeah, it becomes meaningful. So yeah. Casey, I really want to thank you for the conversation. It was wonderful. One of the things that we work really hard to do on Voices of Video is to have meaningful conversations with, just like this one. So you shared a lot of great insights, and can't wait to have you back.
Yeah.
We'll maybe after you get HEVC deployed a little more fully, we can have you come back and talk about, lessons learned, and give us an update.
Yeah. And thanks for having me. It was a great conversation.